Take a look in the mirror, not at your whole face, just your eyes. Brown, blue, green, gray, hazel. Now here's the weird part. You never pick that color. Your parents didn't exactly pick it either. And even your genes didn't choose it in the simple, predictable way most people think. Because eye color is not just a color. It's a biological illusion, a genetics puzzle, and a physics trick happening right in the middle of your face. In fact, if your eyes are blue, they are not truly blue in the way a blue shirt is blue. And if your eyes are green or hazel, the story gets even stranger. So why are your eyes this color? Why not darker? Why not lighter? Why do some people have almost black eyes, while others have eyes that look like ice, honey, moss, or smoke? And why can the exact same eyes look completely different, depending on the room, the weather, or the photo? The answer starts before you were born. Long before your first breath, long before your name, your body was already building your eyes. It was doing that from a set of instructions stored inside your DNA. And somewhere in that process, your future eye color was being shaped piece by piece. Not painted, not selected from a menu, built. But to understand how that happened, we need to talk about the colored part of your eye. That part is called the iris. The iris is the ring around your pupil, and its main job is surprisingly practical. It helps control how much light enters your eye. In bright light, it tightens. In darkness, it opens up more. It works like a living camera aperture. But the iris also carries the feature people notice most, its color. And that color mostly depends on two things. First, how much pigment is inside the iris. Second, how light interacts with the structure of that iris. That pigment is called melanin. You've probably heard of melanin before because it also affects skin and hair color. In the eye, it does something similar. Generally, the more melanin your iris has, the darker your eyes appear. And the less melanin it has, the lighter your eyes appear. That's the first big rule. More melanin, darker eyes. Less melanin, lighter eyes. Simple, but not simple enough. Because if eye color were only about pigment, then blue eyes would need blue pigment, and they don't. That's where things get fascinating. Blue eyes are not blue because they contain blue dye, blue cells, or some secret blue chemical. They look blue because of the way light behaves inside the iris. When there isn't much melanin in the front layers of the iris, light enters, scatters, and reflects back out. And that makes shorter wavelengths stand out more. To our eyes, that looks blue. So blue eyes are, in a sense, a light effect. That doesn't mean the color is fake or imaginary. The color is real to your vision. But it is created by structure and light, not by actual blue pigment sitting there like paint on a wall. That's why people often compare blue eyes to the sky. The sky is not a giant blue object. It looks blue because of how light scatters. Blue eyes work in a surprisingly similar way. Now compare that to brown eyes. Brown eyes contain more melanin, and that melanin absorbs more light. Since less light is bouncing around and scattering back out, the iris appears darker. Brown eyes can range from warm brown to deep brown to so dark they almost look black. So if you zoom out, the basic logic is this. Brown eyes absorb more light, blue eyes scatter more visible light. And already, eye color starts looking less like a random cosmetic feature. It starts looking more like a mix of chemistry and physics. But now we hit the next twist. If eye color were only about a lot of melanin versus a little melanin, then there would mostly be just dark eyes and light eyes. But humans are not that simple. We have green eyes, hazel eyes, gray eyes, amber eyes. We have eyes that seem gold in sunlight and green indoors, and eyes that look one color from far away and another color up close. So what is going on? The answer is genetics, and not the kindergarten version of genetics. Not the simple chart where one gene beats another and that's the end of the story. For a long time, people were taught that brown eyes dominate blue eyes in a neat, tidy way. It sounds clean, it sounds easy, it sounds like the kind of thing that belongs in a school worksheet. But real life is messier. Eye color is influenced by multiple genes, not just one. Some genes help regulate how much melanin is made. Others influence how that pigment is stored, distributed, or expressed in the iris. And some affect the structure of the iris itself, which changes how light is scattered. So eye color is not a single switch. It's more like a control panel with several dials being adjusted at once. Two of the most important genetic players are called OCA2 and HERC2. You do not need to memorize those names. What matters is what they do. They help influence melanin production and how strongly that pigment shows up in the iris. Small genetic differences in this system can shift eye color toward lighter or darker outcomes. And since this system works together with several other genes, the final result becomes much harder to predict than people expect. That's why eye color inheritance can surprise families. Sometimes people think eye color should be easy to predict just by looking at the parents. Brown plus blue equals this, blue plus blue equals that. But that's not how it always works. Because multiple genes are involved, children can inherit combinations that produce unexpected results. Eye color is influenced by probabilities, not a perfectly simple formula. The old classroom rule is not entirely useless, but it leaves out too much of the real picture. And honestly, the real picture is much more interesting. Your eye color is the result of many tiny biological decisions stacking on top of each other. How much pigment should be made? Where should that pigment go? How dense should it be? How will light move through the tissue? And how do all those inherited instructions combine into one visible color? That's why your eyes are not just brown or blue. They are the final result of a long chain of microscopic events. Now let's talk about the eye colors that confuse people the most. Green and hazel. Green eyes are rare, and they sit in an interesting middle zone. They usually have less melanin than brown eyes, but more than typical blue eyes. On top of that, the structure of the iris and the way light scatters through it create a color that appears green. So green eyes are not simply light brown or dark blue. They are their own combination of pigment, structure, and light behavior. Hazel eyes are even trickier. Hazel eyes often contain a mix of colors in the same iris, brown, gold, green, even hints of amber. That's why they can look different from moment to moment. In one light, they look mostly green. In another, they suddenly look brown. In a photo, they can seem almost golden. People sometimes describe hazel eyes like they are changing color. In reality, the eye itself is not shape-shifting every hour. What changes is the light, the contrast, and the way your brain interprets the mix of tones inside the iris. And this is where eye color gets almost theatrical, because eyes do not exist in isolation. Their color is affected by what surrounds them: skin tone, lighting, clothing, makeup, background color, camera exposure, shadows, sunlight. A person with light eyes can look intensely blue outside, gray indoors, and almost green in the right photo. Same eyes, different conditions. So when someone says, "My eyes change color," the honest answer is, not exactly, but they can definitely look different, and sometimes dramatically different. Now here's another strange fact. Your eye color might not have been the same when you were born. A lot of babies enter the world with lighter looking eyes, especially blue-gray eyes. That's because melanin production in the iris is still developing. Over time, as more melanin builds up, those eyes can darken. Blue can become hazel, gray can become brown. Light eyes can deepen over the first months or years of life. So if you've ever seen baby photos where someone had pale eyes and later ended up with dark brown eyes, that's completely normal. Their biology was still finishing the job. And that idea alone is kind of amazing. Your body wasn't just following a fixed visual blueprint. It was still actively developing the final look of your eyes after birth. Now let's ask a bigger question. Why do humans have different eye colors at all? Why not just one default human eye color for everyone? The short answer is variation. Human beings are incredibly varied as a species. Hair color varies, skin tone varies, height varies, facial features vary, and eye color varies too. That variation comes from inherited differences in genes and how those genes affect pigment and tissue structure. Over generations, those differences get mixed, passed down, reshuffled, and recombined. That's why eye color can run through families in patterns that feel familiar, but never perfectly predictable. One sibling has brown eyes, another has green. A cousin has gray, a grandparent has hazel. Someone in the family has eyes so dark they almost look black. Same family tree, different combinations. And that doesn't mean biology failed. It means biology is more creative than the simple version you learned in school. Now let's destroy a myth that still hangs around. Some people talk about certain eye colors as if they are stronger, better, or somehow linked to personality. Brown eyes are stronger, blue eyes are softer, green eyes are mysterious, dark eyes are more powerful. That makes for fun movie dialogue. It is not science. Eye color is not a ranking system. It does not measure intelligence, strength, value, or some secret personality code. It is simply the visible outcome of pigment levels, iris structure, light behavior, and genetics. That's it. And yet, it still feels personal. Because eyes are one of the first things we notice about people. They catch light, they reflect emotion, they draw attention, they make faces memorable. And unlike a hairstyle, a jacket, or a filter, your natural eye color was not something you picked one morning. It was assembled by your body, which makes it strangely intimate. Before you ever saw the world, your body was already building the lenses that would look back at it. And that final color, whether dark brown, pale gray, deep green, warm hazel, or bright blue, was the result of countless microscopic processes happening silently inside you. So when someone says, "You have your mother's eyes," they are talking about more than appearance. They are talking about inheritance, about instructions passed through generations, about tiny molecular patterns becoming visible as color. And this is the part I love most. Eye color feels simple until you actually inspect it. At first, it seems like just another feature. Then you look closer. Brown eyes are melanin-rich structures absorbing more light. Blue eyes are low pigment irises scattering light in a very specific way. Green and hazel eyes are complex blends where pigment and structure create colors that seem almost impossible. Suddenly, the thing you've seen in the mirror your whole life stops being ordinary. It becomes engineered, not engineered by machines, engineered by biology. And maybe that's the best way to think about it. Your eye color is not just decoration. It is evidence. Evidence that the human body is built from layered instructions. Evidence that genes do not always act in simple, obvious ways. Evidence that physics shows up in places you never expect. Evidence that even the most familiar part of your face contains more science than most people realize. So why are your eyes this color? Because your iris contains a certain amount of melanin. Because light interacts with that iris in a certain way. Because several genes influenced how pigment was produced, stored, and expressed. Because inheritance is more complex than a two-color chart. Because your body followed a deep set of biological instructions long before you were born. That's the answer. Not fate, not luck, not a random aesthetic detail. Biology, beautiful, complicated biology. And maybe the strangest part is that we usually stop at the surface. We say, "She has blue eyes." But what we really mean is, her iris contains low pigment and light scattering makes it appear blue. We say, "He has brown eyes." But what we really mean is, his iris contains more melanin, which absorbs more light and creates a darker appearance. We say they have hazel eyes, but what we really mean is, their eyes are doing something more complicated than a single color name can describe. So the next time you look in a mirror, don't just see a color. See a process, see genes handing down instructions, see pigment forming in living tissue, see light entering your eye and bouncing back out. See biology, chemistry, and physics meeting in one tiny circle around your pupil, because your eyes were never just a random feature. They are one of the most visible scientific stories on your body. And the wildest part? You've been carrying that story on your face the whole time, without even noticing. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and stay healthy, friends.